Now, this video is a bit different today. It's a response to TechAltar, which is a channel usually dedicated to mobile phones and the business around mobile phones. But the last video was about cars. Its original name was The Insane Cost of Owning a Car, if I'm not mistaken. And now it's called How Cars Keep People Poor and Taxes High. And I agree with the essential message of the video, which is cars are insanely expensive and public transport should be more widespread. And there's a link in the description if you want to go and see the video for yourself, which I do urge you to do. However, there are some mistakes in the video that I'd like to address here. And I hope you'll see this as constructive criticism, because that's what it is. Because I agree with the message of the video, it is important that your claims are solid. And if the calculations are too far off, which I think they sort of are, then you're basically opening yourself up to the Jeremy Clarksons of this world to come and beat you with sticks and say, see, cars aren't that expensive, blah, 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 blah. I'm saying this as a car person. I really like cars and I like driving my car. But I don't like driving my car in town, bringing it in, facing traffic, finding a place to park, which is nearly impossible. When you find a place to park, it's expensive. And then you leave your car and you're constantly like, oh God, is it getting burgled? Is it getting vandalized? The pigeons shit all over my car. Now, as I say, I don't think some of these calculations are correct. Let me say also, first of all, that Martin shows us his sources. He even provides an Excel sheet with all his calculations. So I think the example that's most prominently used in the video is of a Volkswagen Golf, which makes sense because I think it's still the best-selling car in Europe, at least it was. And Martin estimates that the cost of owning this car every year in Germany is 7,657 euros per year. And that includes depreciation and fuel and insurance and then other. What's that other? That's something I'm sort of have an issue with, because if you don't say what other is, what's that? Tolls and parking? It's a bit of a dubious number. I do admit I did not read the paper where this is from because it's very long and I don't have time. I work full-time, sorry. I do apologise. I probably should read that, but yeah. It seems to be a very high sum for just other, because it's 1,300 euros, which is nearly as much as the fuel. Now, in the chart provided, unfortunately, Martin has made a mistake. He says that the lifetime of the car is 679,167 euros. In the video, he says the lifetime is 50 years, and if that's correct, then it should be 382,850 euros. I think he just made an honest mistake, because if you look down below, by the way, these are private share costs, so it's what the owner pays. Doesn't include the social costs, what everyone else pays for the car, which is really important. But I digress. I think he made an honest mistake, because the cost for an SUV over the life of the car over those 50 years is the same, 679,167. So probably it's just a mistake, copy-paste, I don't know. But then the Opel Corsa above, the private share, is 6,726. Slightly different from the video, 22 euros more than that which is in the video, but never mind. But if you multiply that by 50, it's 336,300 euros, and there you can see it's nearly 353,000 euros. So that's a near 17,000 euro difference. Is that the cost of the car, the initial cost? Because I don't think the yearly cost includes finance. So I'm not really sure what it means. If it doesn't include finance, if that difference in price is the price of the car, then it probably should be indicated. Something's off there, at least in my humble opinion. But then you go to the chart that has long-term payment comparison with 2.5% inflation. And Martin uses his own yearly costs for transport, for mobility, versus the yearly cost for the Golf. Problem is, he uses that yearly value, and that includes depreciation, and you can't do that. At least not for this calculation. It doesn't make sense, because it's over 50, or in this case, even 60 years. And depreciation, first off, it's not linear. You can't calculate depreciation, every year I'm going to lose X amount on the car. It doesn't work like that. If you buy a new car, by the way, when you buy a new car, depreciation is massive. The value of the car goes down very steeply in the first few years. It begins to level out until it plateaus more or less. And then if the car is a certain car of a certain brand, I don't know, a certain model, it may even appreciate if it's in good condition. It may become a classic. So it's actually worth more money. And that doesn't factor that in, and basically assumes that depreciation is constant and continues over a 50-year period. It doesn't. It basically would mean that your car would depreciate so much that it would go into like negative land, and by the time you want to get rid of the car after 50 years, you'd have to pay someone thousands of euros to take it away, and that just doesn't happen. That just makes no sense. I also have a bit of an issue with the fact this is just new cars, and most of us, I would say, probably don't drive new cars. At least I don't. I never have, and I doubt I ever will, because it's just so silly, so expensive. And also to bolster my claims and to show that I'm not just pulling numbers out of my proverbial backside, I'm going to use the numbers for my car, my Citroen C5 Tourer, which I bought 44 months ago. I actually got it here because of the calculations. And this is the amount of money I've spent on the car. As you can see, I've spent as much on fuel as on the rest. Also, I should factor in that I made 130 euros by selling off the original radio and center displays. And also, if you factor in depreciation, which in my case, I bought the car for 7,000 euros and I plan to sell it for 5,000 as soon as possible. So that's a 2,000 euro depreciation, comes to 12,514 euros and 38 cents. Divide that by 44, the amount of months I have had the car, multiply that by 12, and you've got a yearly cost of 3,413 euros and 1 cent. Now, what's interesting about that is at the very beginning of the video, Martin says that car owners tend to underestimate the cost of owning a car by 52%. Now, I would admit that's an average because I didn't underestimate that far, but I didn't realize how much it was. I thought it was less. So there is definitely a point to that. Drivers do underestimate the cost of their cars, and I keep very meticulous records. If I go and hoover the car wash quickly because there are crumbs in the child's seat, and pay 50 cents, then I will jot down that expense and that will count towards the global cost of running the car. So yeah, I'm not pulling numbers out of my backside at all. So that just goes to show that cars are incredibly expensive to run. But again, because these numbers are skewed, then when the table comes up of how much percentage of someone's overall earnings a car costs, that isn't correct. That is not what it costs at all. And I do apologize. If I could, I would calculate myself what sort of cost that would be. And I'm sorry, I'm just not clever enough to do that. But anyway, having said all that, that's just my own opinion. I'd also, if that's okay, I'd also like to give some thoughts in general on some other things on the video that I think probably were a bit misrepresented. Martin compares the cost in Berlin of parking a car, the sort of like cost per square meter of parking a car versus how much an apartment costs per square meter. And I think you're not comparing apples with apples. In this city, if you want to rent, for example, a space in a garage, that'll set you back about 70 euros. And that is obviously going to be much more cheaper per square meter than it is, for example, an apartment. And there's a reason for that, because you can live in an apartment. You can't really live in a garage space. You can try, but I don't think it would be feasible, and that's why no one really does it. So I don't think that's a fair comparison, to be honest with you. Also, the question of needing your car or not. I don't know if Martin has children, or maybe he's got a partner, and it's completely different if you've got children. Same thing as another channel I watch a lot, Adam Something, great channel as well. But again, from a perspective of someone who's either single or doesn't have children. And that completely changes the dynamics in your life. I have 2 children, and having a car makes it extremely much more convenient to get around for various things. I should point out, I do go to work by public transport, and I work home, and I take my children to school by metro, unless it's miserable outside and it's raining and windy and whatnot, then I'll take them by car. But if I didn't have a car, it would be doable. You know, we'd have to suck it up. But, you know, we're not made of effervescent material, won't disappear if it rains on us. So, yeah, that's... and also, I should say, also point out, many families get by without cars consciously choosing not to have a car, and I respect them for that and so on. But so far in my life, it's hard to make things work without a car. Also, in terms of the cities versus the countryside, Martin pointed out how in most developed countries, most people live in cities, and that's true. But that depends on the cities, depends on the country. In this country, for example, I live in the second largest city, and we are rather well served by public transport. It has to be said. And it's also much better than it was 20 years ago when I had to go around by bus all the time. It was horrible. The buses were unreliable. There was no metro. The trains were okay. The trains actually were okay, but yeah, it's much better. However, if you go 80 kilometers south to Aveiro, it's 50 miles, I used to work there, and public transport there is rubbish. It is completely and utterly pathetic. I worked slightly outside Aveiro. Everyone went to work by car because there was no feasible way of catching a bus there. They were very unreliable. Oh, also should point out, Aveiro is a cycling-friendly city, but that's a bit of a lie. You can cycle in the centre and some bits, but then if you want to go from the centre outwards, you can't. It's a urban car-infested wasteland with aggressive, fast roads. It's horrible. But anyway, everyone had to go by car to work, everyone. And the thing is, it's not sort of uncommon outside large city centres, or should I say the larger cities here in Portugal, for this sort of thing to happen. Buses are unreliable and they're bad. Does that mean we shouldn't invest in buses? Of course not. It's quite the opposite. We should make them better to make people want to use them more. Make public transport attractive and accessible to as many people as possible. Because then, you know, more people will use it, so more money will be funneled into it. Because right now, public transport can be a bit iffy. This is the bus that I rode here this morning. The window was coming off. The panels above were hastily fixed in place with the mismatched screws. It's not perfect, but you know, it beats walking or going in the rain or having to bring your car and park it somewhere where its door is going to be kicked in or something. So and the more people use it, the more people will invest in it. You know, it's just supply and demand in action. So yeah, that's my take on the video. I hope if Martin, by any chance you do see this, I hope you see this as a constructive criticism, because that's what it's supposed to be. It really is. And I really like your videos, and I watch them all the time. For everyone else also, leave your thoughts. You know, what's it like where you live? Do you like public transport? Is it impossible to use? You know, like North America, for example. Yes, I do watch Not Just Bikes as well. But enough name dropping. Thank you very much for watching. And I hope to see you in a future video. I bid you all farewell.